Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, and pranams. Thank you all for joining in for our Bhagavad Gita study session. We're continuing from 12.1. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजना सहितं श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान् सहगणा ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी निति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे नमो महावदन्याय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नाम्ने गौरऋषे नमः पंचतत्वात्मकं कृष्णं भक्तरूप स्वरूपकं भक्तावतारं भक्ताख्यं नमामि भक्तशक्तिकम् हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधो दीनबंधो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे गुरवे गौरचंद्राय राधिकाय तदालये कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तद्भक्ताय नमो नमः मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य ईश्वरं हरि ओम तत्सत्. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, Dandavat pranams to all of you. Thank you all for joining in for our Bhagavad Gita study session today. Today we are starting with 12.1. Chapter 12 is very, very important. Chapter 12 talks about devotional service. In the 11th chapter also, Prabhupada ends the last purport, which runs about 2 to 3 pages, where he's talking about only by devotional service can Lord Shri Krishna be known completely. Right? Bhaktya mama vijanati yavan yaschasvi tattvataha. It is only by devotional service that I can be known in full. That is what Krishna tells in Bhagavad Gita. Right? And that is what Prabhupada also explains in the last 2-3 purports, very, very long purports. Prabhupada is repeating the same point again and again, right? Whenever our acharyas repeat something, that means that it is very, very important. Right? Krishna himself repeats, Manmana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. Again, he repeats the same thing in chapter number 18. Manmana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. Mame vaishyati satyam te pratijani priyosi me. Like that, when there is repetition in the Shastras, it means that it is very, very important and we need to follow that. Right? That's why Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nasteva, 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 Gati Ranyata. There is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way in this age of Kali other than the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, by which we can attain the desired success of Krishna Prema. Right? So, in this way, repetition, whenever it is given, it is very, very important. So here also we see that Krishna is repeating again and again that I am showing you this universal form because if anyone claims themselves to be God or to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, ask them to show the universal form, right? And then again, Krishna says that a devotee does not want to have the darshan of the universal form. He does not even want to have darshan of the four-handed form. He's only interested in the two-handed Shamasundar form. Why? Because there can be loving reciprocation only with the two-handed form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, after having explained everything, again in chapter number 12, Arjuna is asking Krishna, Evam satata yuktaye bhaktastvām paryupasate, yechapyaksharam avyaktam tesham ke yoga vittamaha. Which is better? Is it the worship of the impersonal Brahman or is it engaging in your devotional service? So that's what we ended yesterday, wherein today we will start with reading the purport to chapter 12, verse number 1. So let me share my screen. Devotees can raise your hands and then let's start reading. Okay. Leela Nandini Mataji, go ahead. Arjuna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandat Pranam.
Hare Krishna. So yeah, you can read the words and then 12.1.
Yeah, Arjuno vacha evam satata yuktaye bhaktastvām paryupasate ye chapi aksharam avyaktam tesham te yoga vittamaha. Synonyms also, Mataji?
Yes.
Arjuna vacha, Arjuna said, evam, thus, satata, always, yukta, engage, those who, bhakta, devotees, tvam, you, paryupasate, properly worship, those who, cha, also, api, again, aksharam, beyond the senses, avyaktam, the unmanifested, tesham, of them, ke, who, yoga vittamaha, the most perfect in knowledge of yoga. Translation and purport by Sri A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Arjuna inquired, which are considered to be more perfect, those who are always properly engaged in a devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested. Purport. Krishna has now explained about the personal, the impersonal, and the universal, and has described all kinds of devotees and yogis. Generally, the transcendentalists can be divided into two classes. One is the impersonalist, and the other is the personalist. The personalist devotee engages himself with all energy in the service of the Supreme Lord. The impersonalist also engages himself not directly in the service of Krishna, but in meditation on the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested. We find in this chapter that of the different processes for realization of the absolute truth, Bhakti Yoga, devotional service, is the highest. If one at all desires to have the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then he must take to devotional service. Those who worship the Supreme Lord directly by devotional service are called personalists. Those who engage themselves in meditation on the impersonal Brahman are called impersonalists. Arjuna is here questioning which position is better. There are different ways to realize the absolute truth, but Krishna indicates in this chapter that Bhakti Yoga, or devotional service to him, is the highest of all. It is the most direct and it is the easiest means for association with the Godhead. In the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Lord explained that the living entity is not the material body. He is a spiritual spark, and the absolute truth is the spiritual whole. In the seventh chapter, he spoke of the living entity as being part and parcel of the Supreme Whole and recommended that he transfer his attention fully to the whole. Then again in the 8th chapter, it was said that anyone who thinks of Krishna at the time of quitting his body is at once transferred to the spiritual sky, to the abode of Krishna. And at the end of 6th chapter, the Lord clearly said that of all the yogis, one who always think of Krishna within himself is considered the most perfect. So in practically every chapter, the conclusion has been that one should be attached to the personal form of Krishna, for that is the highest spiritual realization. Nevertheless, there are those who are not engaged to the personal form of Krishna. They are so firmly detached that even in the preparation of commentaries to Bhagavad Gita, they want to distract other people from Krishna and transfer all devotion to the impersonal Brahma Jyotir. They prefer to meditate on the impersonal form of the absolute truth, which is beyond the reach of the senses and is not manifest. And so factually, there are two classes of transcendentalists. Now Arjuna is trying to settle the question of which process is easier and which of the classes is most perfect. In other words, he is clarifying his own position because he is attached to the personal form of Krishna. is not attached to the impersonal Brahman. He wants to know whether his position is secure. The impersonal manifestation, either in this material world or in the spiritual world of the Supreme Lord, is a problem for meditation. Actually, one cannot perfectly conceive of the impersonal feature of the absolute truth. Therefore, Arjuna wants to say, what is the use of such a waste of time? Arjuna experienced in the 11th chapter that to be attached to the person of Krishna is best because he could thus understand all other forms at the same time and there was no disturbance to his love for Krishna. This important question asked of Krishna by Arjuna will clarify the distinction between the impersonal and personal conceptions of the absolute truth. Hare Krishna, Mataji, Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Mataji. Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
the very important question of whether one should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his personal form or whether one should go for the impersonal form is a question that is asked by Arjuna, right? Although Krishna has clarified multiple number of times already, it is only for people like us who get confused periodically, right? When something comes up, again we go back to our square one. What is the doubt that we had, right? So I used to facilitate all of us and to reiterate the truth again. The devotional service is the most important pathway to attain the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to completely understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Arjuna is again asking the same question to Lord Shri Krishna. And let us see what Lord Shri Krishna answers. Okay, let's move on to text number 2. Okay, Rajneesh Prabhu, go ahead. Text number 2.
हरे कृष्णा माता जी दंडवत प्रणाम।
Hare Krishna, Dandat Pranam Prabhu.
श्री भगवान उवाच मैया विश्वमनो ये मां नित्युक्ता उपासते श्रद्धया पर्योपेतास्ते मे युक्ततमा मतः। Synonym. Shri Bhagavan Uvac, the Supreme Personality of God has said, Maya, upon me, Vivasya, fixing, Manha, the mind, ye, those who, Mam, may, Nitya, always, Yukta, engaged, Paste, worship, Shraddha, with faith, Saraya, transcendental, Upetha, endured, they, me, by me, Yukta, Samha, most perfect in yoga, Atah are translation and purport by Sri Prabhupada, Sri Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged, worshipping me with great and confidential faith are considered by to be most perfect. Purport. In answer to Arjun's questions, Krishna clearly says that he who concentrates upon his personal form and who worships with faith and devotion to the most perfect yoga. For one in such Krishna consciousness, there are no material activities because everything is done for the pure devotee is constantly engaged. Sometimes he chants, sometimes he hears or reads books about Krishna, or sometimes he cooks prasadam or goes to the marketplace to purchase something for Krishna, or sometimes he watches the temple or the dishes. Whatever he does not let a single moment pass without his activity. Such action is samadhi. Hare
Yeah. So Krishna gives a very direct answer to Arjuna. There is no ambiguity at all, right? This is the verse for today that we will memorize and we'll contemplate on this verse, right? Yesterday was the question verse, what Arjuna asked, and today is the answer verse by Lord Sri Krishna. Maya aveshya mano yema, fixing the mind upon me, and not just one minute or 2 minutes or 2 hours. Nitya yukta upasate, eternally engaged in my worship all the time. Nitya means always, without a break. Shraddhaya parayopeta. Shraddhaya means with faith. Paraya upeta. That means one who is situated in transcendence. Te me yukta tamomataha. Such a person is situated perfectly in yoga. Yukta tama. Yukta tama means one who is most perfect in yoga. Right? And mataha. Mataha means that is my opinion. Right? So we are only considered about Krishna's opinion. What is Krishna's opinion? Krishna is saying here his opinion. Maya aveshamano yemam nitya yukta upasate Shraddhaya parayopetas tame yukta tamo mataha. So this is what we will focus and concentrate on our meditation today, right? The focus on meditating upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, rendering personal seva to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, offering boga to the Lord, offering arati to the Lord, bathing the Lord, dressing the Lord, right? These are the ways by which one can develop attachment to the Lord, and this is the most perfect system of yoga, right? When we perform action for the Lord, right? We cook for the Lord, we serve the Lord, we bathe the Lord, we dress the Lord. In all of these ways, we establish our connection back with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and this is the most important way, or this is the highest level of realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as his Sachitananda form, right? Which means Sat, Chit, and Ananda means in his blissful, eternal, and full of knowledge. This form, right? That we are worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the highest level of realization, and Paramatma realization as well as the Brahman realization are considered to be subsets, or they are considered to be lower levels of realization in comparison to understanding and serving the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or the lotus form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All right, let's move ahead to the next verse, 3 to 4. Okay, who will read? Sudha Mataji, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandat
Hare
Pranam.
Krishna, Dandat Pranam.
ये त्वक्षरम् अनिर्देश्यम् अव्यक्तं पर्युपासते सर्वत्र गमचिन्त्यं च कुटस्थम् अचलं ध्रुवं सन्नियम्येन्द्रियग्रामं सर्वत्र समभूतयः ते प्राप्नुवन्ति मामेव सर्वभूतहिते रताः. Synonyms: ye, those who; two, but; aksharam, that which is beyond the perception of the senses; anirdesham, indefinite; avyaktam, unmanifested; paryupasate, completely engaged in worshipping; sarvatragam, all pervading; achintyam, inconceivable; cha, also; kutastam, unchanging; achalam, immovable; dhruvam, fixed; sanniyamya, controlling; indriyagramam, all the senses; sarvatra, everywhere; Samabuddhayah, equally disposed; te, they; prapnuvanti, achieve; mam, me; eva, certainly; sarvabhuta hite, for the welfare of all living entities; rataha, engaged. Translation and purport by Jivan Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. But those who fully worship the unmanifested, that which lies beyond the perception of the senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, fixed and immovable, the impersonal conception of the absolute truth, by controlling the various senses and being equally disposed to everyone, such persons engaged in the welfare of all at last achieve me. Purport. Those who do not directly worship the Supreme Godhead Krishna, but who attempt to achieve the same goal by an indirect process, also ultimately achieve the same goal, Sri Krishna. After many births, the man of wisdom seeks refuge in me, knowing that Vasudeva is all. When a person comes to full knowledge after many births, he surrenders unto Lord Krishna. If one approaches the Godhead by the method mentioned in this verse, he has to control the senses, render service to everyone, and engage in the welfare of all beings. It is inferred that one has to approach Lord Krishna, otherwise there is no perfect realization. Often there is much penance involved before one fully surrenders unto him. In order to achieve the super soul within the individual soul, one has to cease the sensual activities of seeing, hearing, tasting, working, etc. Then one comes to understand that the Supreme Soul is present everywhere. Realizing this, one envies no living entity. He sees no difference between man and animal because he sees soul only, not the outer covering. But for the common man, this method of impersonal realization is very difficult. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne, Brahmane Gavi Hastini, Shuni Chaiva Shwapake Cha Panditaha Samadarshinaha. Right, that's what is given here. Right, a person who's endowed with knowledge, Vidya, will always have Vinaya. Vidya, Vinaya, Vinaya Sampanne. He is completely filled with humility. If a person has transcendental knowledge, humility is bar barke. Hey, that means the humility is there in huge quantities in a person who actually has transcendental knowledge. Why? Because that is what transcendental knowledge, by acquiring transcendental knowledge, we understand that we are so insignificant. Whatever we are possessing is because of the mercy of the Lord. right? When we understand that, then what happens? Humility is a natural byproduct, right? That's why humility is also said to be honesty. To accept our position as a servant of the Lord and to act in that position is humility, right? To not unnecessarily, artificially consider ourselves to be controllers. That is false ego. But when we are situated in our true ego of being the servant of the servant of the servant of the Lord, that is actually humility, right? And in that situation, when we are placed in that particular situation, we're able to understand the Lord to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We're able to understand our position as a servant. We're able to perform the service being situated in our constitutional position. And in that way, we're able to attain the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in the next verse, Krishna is going to say it is very difficult to follow the impersonal path, right? The path of impersonal is very, very klesho adhikatarastesham. They're very, very difficult to follow the path of impersonalism. Why? Because we are embodied, we have feelings, we have the mind, intelligence, false ego. Then how do we think that the Lord does not have the form? Right? If you think the Lord himself does not have the form, how can the Lord not have something that even I am having? Right? So it beats the very purpose, or it beats the very definition of God, that the Lord is asamordhva. The Lord has to have something which are not possessed by others, but the Lord can definitely not have something that every individual living entity has. Then the Lord is not Lord, right? The Lord has to have something better or something more than what the living entities have, right? Otherwise, it defeats the definition of God. That's where the completely the impersonalists become baffled at some particular point. They become completely confused, and then they start a philanthropic work, and then finally they come back to the living entity. They come back as living entities, and then they start doing charity, etc. Because they need to have that reciprocation. They cannot be impersonal forever. All right. Karpagoli Mataji, go ahead. Klesho adhikatarastesham avyakta sakta chetasam. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mataji. Kleso adhikatra tarastesam avyakta sakta chetasam avyakta ki gadir dukam deha babdi avyakte synonyms. Avapte synonyms, translation for Prabhupada ki jai. Klesaha, trouble. Adhikatara, very much. Tesam, of them. Avyata, to be manifested, unmanifested. Asakta, attached. Chetasam, of those whose minds. Avyakta, toward the unmanifested. Hi, said certainly. Gadi, process. With trouble. They have Vabdivi by the embodied. Avapte is achieved. Avapyate, achieved. Translation for those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, the impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. Purport, the group of transcendentalists who follow the path of the inconceivable, unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord are called the Jnani Yogis, and the person who are full consciousness engaged in devotional service to the Lord are called Bhakti Yogis. Now that here the difference between the Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga is definitely expressed. The process of Jnana Yoga, although ultimately bringing one to the same goal, is very troublesome. Whereas the path of Bhakti Yoga, the process of being in direct service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is easier and is natural for the embodied soul. The individual soul is embodied since time immemorial. It is very difficult for him to simply theoretically understand that he is not the body. Therefore, the Bhakti Yogi accepts the deity of Krishna as worshipable because there is some bodily conception fixed in the mind which can thus be applied. Of course, the worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his form within the temple is not idol worship. There is evidence in the Vedic literature that the worship may be saguna or nirguna of the Supreme possessing or not possessing the attributes. Worship of the deity in the temple is saguna worship, for the Lord is represented by material qualities, but the form of the Lord, though represented by material qualities such as stone, wood, or oil paint, is not actually material. That is the absolute nature of the Supreme Lord. A crude example may be given here. You may find some mailboxes on the street And if we post letters in those boxes, they will naturally go to the destination without difficulty. But any old box or an imitation which may find somewhere, but which is not authorized by the post office, will not do the work. Similarly, God has an authorized representation in the deity form, which is called Acha Vigraha. This Acha Vigraha is an incarnation of the Supreme Lord. God will accept service through that form. Lord is omnipotent, all perfect, all powerful. Therefore, by his incarnation as Acha Vigraha, he can accept the service of the devotee just to make it convenient for the person or the man in conditional life. So for a devotee, there is no difficulty in approaching the Supreme immediately and directly. But for those who are following the impersonal way to the spiritual realization, the path is difficult. They have to understand the unmanifested representation of the Supreme through such the Vedic literature, such as Upanishads, and they have to learn the language, understand that the perceptional feelings, and realize all these processes. This is not very easy for common men. A person in Krishna consciousness engaged in devotional service simply by the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master, or simply by offering regulative obeisances unto the deity, simply by hearing the glories of the Lord, and simply by eating and the remnants of the footsteps offered to the Lord, realizes the Supreme Personality of God very easily. There is no doubt that the impersonalists are unnecessarily taking a troublesome path with the risk of not realizing the absolute truth at the ultimate end. But the personalist, without any risk, trouble, or difficulty, approaches the Supreme Personality directly. A similar passage appears in Srimad Bhagavatam. It is stated that if one ultimately has surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this surrendering process is called bhakti. But instead takes the trouble to understand what is Brahman and what is not Brahman, and spends his whole life in that way. The result is simply troublesome. Therefore, it is the advice here that one should not take up this troublesome path of self-realization, because that is uncertainty in the ultimate result. As a living entity is eternally an individual soul, and if he wants to merge into the spiritual whole, he may accomplish the realization of the eternal knowledgeable aspects of his original nature, but the blissful portion is not realized. By the grace of some devotee, some devotees such as transcendentalists, highly learned in the process of Jnana Yoga, may come to the point of Bhakti Yoga or devotional service. At that time, long practice in impersonalism also become a source of trouble, because he cannot give up the idea. Therefore, an embodied soul is always in difficulty with the unmanifest, both at the time of practice and at the time of realization. Every living soul is partially independent, and one should know for the certain that this unmanifested realization is against the nature of this spiritual blissful self. One should not take up this process. For every individual living entity, the process of Krishna consciousness, which entails full engagement in devotional service, is the best way. If one wants to ignore this devotional service, there is the danger of turning to atheism. Thus, the process of centering attention on the unmanifested, the inconceivable, which is beyond the approach of the senses, as already expressed in this verse, should never be encouraged. Another time, especially in the scene, it is not advised by Lord Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. So, very, very important and very clearly and straightforward it is written. What is written here? Klesho adhikataras tesham. Very, very difficult to actually understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by following this impersonal method. Of course, the yogi who meditates and then he goes up to the realization of Paramatma, then he goes up to the realization of Bhagavan also, if he comes in contact with the pure devotee of the Lord. Right? So, in that way, one can be fortunate to move up this ladder. Right? But to unlearn and relearn and all takes a lot of time. Right? We need to unlearn all the nonsensical what we've heard from Apasampradaya, and then we enter into a bona fide Sampradaya, and then we hear from a bona fide authority. Right? So first and foremost, all the unnecessary information, the wrong concepts, the wrong tattva are all have to be deleted, eradicated, and then in that place we have to have the the proper understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it is very you have to be very careful to get the right knowledge from the right source in the first time itself, so that we don't have to go through the process of unlearning and relearning and all that. Right? So when we get the knowledge from one of the four bona fide Guru Paramparas, we know the devotional service is the process to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everything else, whether it is impersonal realization, Mayavadism, etc., are going to create more trouble for us. And then we have to unlearn a lot of things and then come to the path of Bhakti Yoga. But Bhakti Yoga is a direct process by which we can directly attain devotional service, which is the process and which is also the sadhya, which is also the goal of our human form of life, which is to always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna, to eternally serve Krishna, like that. Okay, text 6 to 7. Sindhu Mataji, go ahead. And then Shobha Mataji can read. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Okay.
6 to 7. ये तु सर्वाणि कर्माणि मयि सन्न्यस्य मत्पराः अनन्येनैव योगेन मां ध्यायन्त उपासते तेषामहं समुदर्ता मृत्यु संसारसागरात् भवामि न चिरात् पार्थ मय्यावेशितचेतसाम्. Okay, Shobha Mataji, you want to read? I think Sindhu Mataji is a little busy.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Yes, go ahead. Synonyms.
Hare Bol. 1 second, Mataji.
Oh, everybody is busy walking around. Okay, Deval Mataji, go ahead.
Hare Bol. Synonyms to Bhakti Vedanta Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ye, those who, but Sarvani, all Karmani, activities, Mayi, unto me, Sanyasya, giving up, Matparaha, being attached to me, Ananyena, without division, Eva, certainly, Yogena, by practice of such Bhakti Yoga, Mam, upon me, Dhyayataha, meditating, Upasate, worship, Tesam, of them, Aham, I, Samudhartha, the deliver, Mrityu, of death, Samsara, in material existence, Sagara, from the ocean, Bhavami, I become, not Chirat, after a long time, Partha, O son of Pritha, Mai, upon me, Aveshita, fixed, Chetasam, of those whose minds. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. But those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service and always meditating upon me, having fixed their mind upon me, O son of Pritha, for them I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. Purport by Srila Prabhupada, Jai Srila Prabhupada. It is explicitly stated here that the devotees are very fortunate to be delivered very soon from material existence by the Lord. In pure devotional service, one comes to the realization that God is great and that the individual soul is subordinate to Him. His duty is to render service to the Lord, and if he does not, then he will render service to Maya. As stated before, the Supreme Lord can be appreciated only by devotional service. Therefore, one should be fully devoted. One should fix his mind fully on Krishna in one to achieve him. One should work only for Krishna. It does not matter in what kind of work one engages, but that work should be done only for Krishna. That is the standard of devotional service. The devotee does not desire any achievements other than pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His life's mission is to please Krishna and he can sacrifice everything for Krishna's satisfaction, just as Arjuna did in the battle of Kurukshetra. The process is very simple. One can devote himself in his occupation and engage at the same time in chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Such transcendental chanting attracts the devotees to the personality of Godhead. The Supreme Lord herein promises that without delay he will deliver a pure devotee, thus engaged from the ocean of material existence. Those who are advanced yoga practice can willfully transfer the soul to whatever planet they like by the yoga process, and others take the opportunity in various ways. But as far as the devotee is concerned, it is clearly stated here that the Lord Himself takes in. The devotee does not need to wait to become very experienced in order to transfer himself to the spiritual sky. In the Varaha Purana, this verse appears Nayami Paramam Sthanam Archit Adigatim Vina Garudaskandham Aropya Yete Tam Anivad Varitha. The purport of this verse is that a devotee does not need a practiced Ashtanga Yoga in order to transfer his soul to the spiritual planet. The responsibility is taken by the Supreme Lord Himself. He clearly states here that He Himself becomes the deliverer. A child is completely cared by his parents, and thus his position is secure. Similarly, a devotee does not need to endeavor to transfer himself by yoga practice to other planets. Rather, the Supreme Lord, by His great mercy, comes at once riding on his bird carrier Gauda, and at once delivers the devotees from material existence. Although a man who has fallen in the ocean may struggle very hard and may be very expert in swimming, he cannot save himself, but if someone comes and picks him up from the water, then he is easily rescued. Similarly, the Lord picks up the devotees from the material existence. One simply has to practice the easy process of Krishna consciousness and fully engage himself in devotional service. Any intelligent man should always prefer the process of devotional service to all other paths. In the Narayana, this is confirmed as
Narayaniyam.
follows. Narayaniyam, this is confirmed as follows. Yavai sadhana sampatihi purushartha chatushtaye dhayavina tat apnoti naro narayanashrayah. The purport of this verse is that one should not engage in the different process of fruitive activities or cultivate knowledge by the mental speculative process. One who is devoted to the Supreme Personality can attain all the benefits derived from other yogic processes, speculation, rituals, sacrifices, charities, etc. That is the specific benediction of devotional service. Simply by chanting the holy name of Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, the devotee of the Lord can approach the supreme destination easily and happily. But this destination cannot be approached by any other process of religion. The conclusion of Bhagavad Gita is stated in the 18th chapter. सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज अहं त्वां सर्वपापेभ्यो मोक्षयिष्यामि मा शुचः. One should give up all other processes of self-realization and simply execute devotional service in Krishna consciousness. That will enable one to reach the highest perfection of life. There is no need for one to consider the sinful actions of his past life because the Supreme Lord fully takes charge of him. Therefore, one should not futilely try to deliver himself in spiritual realization. Let everyone take shelter of the Supreme Omnipotent Godhead Krishna. That is the highest perfection of life. Hari Bol. Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a very long purport, very, very beautiful purport. Wherein, if we see how many times the word devotional service is mentioned, we'll be astounded to see that in every paragraph, at least 2 to 3 words of devotional service is there. One should give up all other process of realization, simply execute devotional service, take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Omnipotent Lord Shri Krishna, and perform devotional service. This is a specific benediction of devotional service, right? So, in every paragraph, Prabhupada is stressed upon the point of performing devotional service, because performing devotional service is the way by which one can attain the desired success of Krishna Prema, especially in this age of Kali, when it is said chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra is the only way, and chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra is Yuga Dharma for this age of Kali. That means we attain perfection simply by chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and that is the best devotional service that we can do in this age of Kali. Because even while we are chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, what are we asking? We are engaging, we are requesting the Lord that please engage me in your devotional service. Isn't it? So we are asking for devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the medium of asking is also the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and the method of executing devotional service is also the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So that is the position, the topmost position of chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra. It is a sadhana, it is also the sadhya. Okay. Text number 8. Sindhu Mataji, are you there now?
Yes, Mataji, I can read.
Yes, text number 8.
Mataji, text 8, right?
Yeah.
It's Mai eva mana adashva, Mai buddhim niveshaya, Nivashishyasi Mai eva, Ata urdhvam na samchayaha. Synonyms: Mai upon me, eva certainly, Manaha mind, adashva fixed, Mai upon me, buddhim intelligence, Niveshaya applied, Nivashyasi you will live, Mai in me, eva certainly, Ata urdhvam thereafter, na never, samchaya doubt. Translation and purport by Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and engage all your intelligence in me. Thus you will live in me, always without a doubt. Purport. One who is engaged in Lord Krishna's devotional service lives in a direct relationship with the Supreme Lord. So there is no doubt that his position is transcendental from the very beginning. A devotee does not live on the material plane, he lives in Krishna. The holy name of the Lord and the Lord are non-different. Therefore, when the devotee chants Hare Krishna, Krishna and his internal potency are dancing on the tongue of the devotee. When he offers Krishna food, Krishna directly accepts these eatables, and the devotee becomes Krishna-sized by eating the remnants. One who does not engage in such service cannot understand how this is so, although this is a process recommended in the Bhagavad Gita and in other Vedic literatures.
So
Hare
again and
Krishna.
again, what is the process that is recommended? Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama eva kevalam. Chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra, chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. This is the way by which we can be eternally engaged in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, text number 9. Okay, text number 9. Who will read? Okay, Deval Mataji, go ahead. And next, Vrishabhanu Kanya Mataji can read. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dhanvat Pranam.
Dhanavad.
अथ चित्तं समाधातुं न शक्नोषि मयि स्थिरम् अभ्यासयोगेन ततो मामिच्छाप्तुं धनञ्जय. Synonyms: atha, if, therefore, chittam, mind, samadhatum, to fix, na, not, shaknosi, shaknoshi, you are able, mai, upon me, sthiram, steadily, abhyasa yogena, by the practice of devotional service, tataha, then, mam, me, Ichha, this desire, Aptum, to get, Dhananjaya, O winner of wealth, Arjuna. Translation by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. My dear Arjuna, O winner of wealth, if you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. In this way, develop a desire to attain me. Purport. In this verse, two different processes of Bhakti Yoga are indicated. The first applies to one who has actually developed an attachment for Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by transcendental love. And the other one is for one who has not developed an attachment for the Supreme Person by transcendental love. For the second class, there are different prescribed rules and regulations, and one can follow to be ultimately elevated to the stage of attachment to Krishna. Bhakti Yoga is a purification of the senses. At the present moment, in material existence, the senses are always impure, being engaged in sense gratification. But by the practice of Bhakti Yoga, these senses can be purified, and in the purified state, they come directly in contact with the Supreme Lord. In this material existence, I may be engaged in some service to some master, but I don't really lovingly serve my master. I simply serve to get some money. And the master is also not in love. He takes service from me and pays me. So there is no question of love. But in spiritual life, for one must be elevated to the pure stage of love. That stage of love can be achieved by practice of devotional service performed with the present senses. This love of God is now in a dormant state in everyone's heart, and therefore, and their love of God is manifested in different ways, but it is contaminated by material association. Now, the heart has to be purified of the material association, and that dormant natural love for Krishna has to be revived. That is the whole process. To practice the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, one should, under the guidance of an expert spiritual master, follow certain principles. One should rise early in the morning, take bath, enter the temple, and offer prayers and chant Hare Krishna. Then collect flowers to offer to the deity, cook food stuffs to offer to the deity, take prasadam, and so on. There are various rules and regulations which one should follow, and one should constantly hear Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam from pure devotees. This practice can help anyone rise to the level of love of God, and then he is sure of his progress into the spiritual kingdom of God. This practice of Bhakti Yoga, under the rules and regulations, with the direction of a spiritual master, will surely bring one to the stage of love of God. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena seveya upadekshyanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Upadekshanti te jnanam. The transcendental knowledge will be revealed in the heart of the disciple by the spiritual master, provided the student is actually hearing from a bona fide spiritual master, inquiring submissively and also rendering devotional service. That is what is given here. Two things are requisites, essential requisites to understand transcendental knowledge. One is inquiring submissively, and two is to render devotional service. Okay, fine. Then text number 10. Vrishamanu Kanya Mataji, go ahead.
Yes, Mataji. Hare Krishna, Dandot Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Dandat Pranam.
अभ्यासप्य समर्थोऽसि मत्कर्म परमो भव मदर्थम् अपि कर्माणि कुर्वन् सिद्धिम् अवाप्स्यसि. Synonym. Abhyase in practice. Api, even if. Asamartha, unable. Asi, you are. Mat karma, my work. Paramaha, dedicated. Bhava, become. Mat artham, for my sake. Api, even. At my work. Kurvan, performing. Subham, siddhim, perfection. Adyapasi, you will achieve. Translation by Sri Prabhupada ki jai. If you cannot practice the regulation of Bhakti Yoga, then just try to work for me, because by working for me, you will come to the perfect stage, purport. One who is not even to practice the regulative principle of Bhakti Yoga under the guidance of a spiritual master can still be drawn to this perfectional stage by working for the Supreme Lord. How 55th verse of 11th chapter. One should be sympathetic to the propagation of Krishna consciousness. There are many devotees who are engaged in the propagation of Krishna consciousness, and they require help. Even if one cannot directly practice the regular principles of Bhakti Yoga, he can try to research work. Every endeavor requires capital, organization, and labor. Just as in business, one requires up to stay, some capital to use, some labor, and
Hare Krishna. Okay, I cannot hear you. Just as in business, one requires a place to stay, some capital to use, some labor, and some organization to expand. So the same is required in the service of Krishna. The only difference is that in materialism, one works for sense gratification. The same work, however, can be performed for the satisfaction of Krishna, and that is spiritual activity. If one has sufficient money, he can help in building an office or a temple for propagating Krishna consciousness, or he can help with publications. There are various fields of activity, and one should be interested in such activities. If one cannot sacrifice the results of his activities, the same person can still sacrifice some percentage to propagate Krishna consciousness. This voluntary service to the cause of Krishna consciousness will help one rise to a higher state of love of God, whereupon one becomes perfect. So very, very wonderful here how Krishna is showing his affection towards us. Right? Krishna is giving us so many alternatives. Right? If you cannot completely dedicate all your work for me, at least develop a desire to attain me. At least perform your duties and give a portion of the salary for the propagation of Krishna consciousness. Engage in charitable activities. Right? Like this, you develop a desire to become dear to me. So all of these verses where Krishna is giving a lot of options, it indicates how much Krishna loves us, right? And some or the other, Krishna wants us to come back home, back to Godhead, and some or the other, we should also attempt it with all our hearts. Yena kena prakarena mana Krishna niveshayat. We should also try some or the other, yena kena prakarena, by hook or by crook, right? Some or the other, we have to always fix our mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. If you are able to always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna by always rendering service to the Lord, then automatically all the other problems of this world will go away. Everything that is inauspicious will go away, right? Shubhadham, Kleshagni, Shubhadham, right? Simply remembering the Lord, Kleshagni, all the unnecessary things will go away. Shubhadham, all the auspiciousness will come into our life. So what do you have to do? We simply need to keep our consciousness at a higher level of the state of always working for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, either by way of physical endeavor or by way of contribution of cash or Lakshmi, or by physically engaging in some kind of seva. Right? In that way, what we can do, we can be an instrument in propagating the message of Krishna consciousness, and in this way we can become dear to Lord Sri Krishna. So tomorrow we will continue the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Next Monday we will continue from 12.11. It's a small chapter. There are only about 20 verses. So next Monday we will try to finish this, complete chapter number 12, and then we'll start chapter number 13 on Tuesday. Right? Tomorrow we'll continue with teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद भगवत गीता की जय. अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय. निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे. हरि हरि बोल. वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः. अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय. निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे. हरि हरि बोल. Okay, we'll quickly do Harinam Sankirtan. I'll request devotees to switch on your cameras and give us your darshan. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi पाश्चात्यादिशोदारिणे संसार जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा. हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. जय गौरनिताय जय जय जगन्नाथ. जय बालादेवा जय सुभद्रा जय सुदर्शन. जय बाल गोपाल जय रुक्मिणी विठल. जय राधा माधव जय राधा श्याम सुंदर राधा. रास बिहारी राधा मदन मोहन राधे राधे. जय राधा गोविंद राधा मदन मोहन राधा गोपीनाथ श्री राधे. जय षट गोस्वामी जय गुरु परंपरा जय प्रभुपादा श्रीला गुरुदेवा निताय गौर. हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल. श्रील प्रभुपाद श्रील गुरुदेव की जय. कलियुग पावन हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय. अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय. निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे. हरि हरि बोल. Hare Krishna. So we have 19 devotees who are staying back till now. We'd like to thank Karpagavali Mataji, Shobha Mataji, Shubhangi, Keshvi Mataji, Rajneesh Prabhu, Harjeet Mataji, Vrishman Kanya Mataji, Hema Mataji, Madhureshwari Radha Mataji, Ramya Mataji, for joining us in this most auspicious study of Bhagavad Gita as it is. My sincere gratitude to all of you. Thank you very much. Pancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva patitanam pavanebhyo वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः. आनंद कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय. निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे. हरि हरि बोल. Thank you very much. Meet you all tomorrow morning 5 o'clock Brahma Muhurta chanting, and then we will continue with teachings of Lord Chaitanya at 12:30 p.m. Shobha Mataji shared 12.2 verse today. We'll meditate on that verse. That is the answer to the question that Arjuna asked yesterday that we meditated upon. All right. Thank you very much. Shri Prabhupada Shri Gurudev ki jai.